What's the most messed up thing you did in a sleepover? Played with matches. For years afterward, I thought I'd burn my aunt and uncle's house down. I was staying with them. My cousin and I were lighting matches in the kitchen and throwing them in the sink to put them out. The head of one flew off and landed in the shelving unit by the sink, still smoking, but when we looked for it, we couldn't find it. It was the 80s, so all those kids don't play with matches ads were everywhere. Hours later, we were awakened by my aunt telling us to get out of the house because it was on fire. Watched their house burn to the ground and was terrified to tell them what we'd been doing earlier. I just knew we'd done it. Carried that guilt for years. When I was around 15, which was many years later, I finally told my aunt. She started laughing and after realizing I'd be thinking this the whole time, hugged me and explained it had been wiring in the back bedroom. I was an adult before I finally understood, after learning about how fire marshals investigate fires, that it wasn't just an assumption they'd made, and I could let go of that guilt. So I guess technically the most screwed up thing I did at a sleepover was traumatize myself for years. Story 2. Not a sleepover really, I mean I guess you could call it that, but I was spending the night at my boyfriend's house, maybe 5 or so months into the relationship. I woke up around 3 a.m. with what I assumed was a runny nose and my pillow was pretty wet, so I assumed I was drooling all over the place. Half asleep, I wiped my face and immediately full woke up in shock because the snot I wiped was really warm. Couldn't see a thing, so I sat up to go to the bathroom and right when I did, my nose just started pouring out warm liquid, like it was literally just a waterfall of blood coming out of my nose. I immediately sprinted to the bathroom to get toilet paper, which woke my boyfriend up. I told him I had a nosebleed, so he went to turn on the lights just to make sure I was okay. That toilet paper soaked up fast, so I grabbed a hand towel. That soaked up fast, so I resorted to holding my head above the toilet just to let the blood spill out into it. As soon as my boyfriend turned the lights on, he saw the murder scene that was the bed. Everything was just covered in blood. My clothes, my pillows, my sheets and blanket, just blood everywhere. I was super lightheaded, but the bleeding eventually stopped and I was fine. We threw everything into the hamper and for some reason my boyfriend just left it by the washing machine. His mom rushed downstairs in the morning yelling and waking us up asking if we were okay. We were both confused until we remembered I got possessed by Satan himself just hours before. P.S. I forgot to mention that I, for some reason, found this whole situation hilarious and my boyfriend had a panic attack when he came to check on me in the bathroom. And I was just laughing my ass off, with blood spilling out of and down my face into a bloody toilet. I definitely looked possessed. Story 3. We were all like 9 or 10-year-old girls and everyone else had fallen asleep except for me, so I decided I would play a prank on them. I got up and shook a good amount of black pepper into my hand and went to several of the girls and held it under their noses. What I was thinking would happen was they would wake up sneezing and be like, hey, that was silly. But instead they ended up waking up crying because they inhaled pepper. And it turns out black pepper being inhaled into a sensitive orifice can really sting. The girls cried so hard that my parents woke up and I had to explain the whole innocent idea behind my scheme. I felt so bad. Story 4. In Boy Scouts, I was the morning cook, meaning I woke up before anyone else to chop wood, make fire, and get water boiling. I grabbed the hatchet and start splitting a log into little splinters for kindling. It was cold and dewy. The hatchet slipped from my hand mid-upward swing and went flying to the tent circle. It seriously flew 10 to 15 yards and fell straight down through the roof of a tent where 4 scouts were sound asleep. I'm not sure how long I waited to hear someone start screaming. I probably sat there in terrified anticipation for over a minute. Then I was worried someone might be hurt, so I crawled over to that tent where the hatchet landed. I super quietly unzipped a flap and saw it landed in a bag of clothes very close to some kid's head. I snuck in, grabbed the hatchet, left the tent, zipped it back up, and finished breakfast. I heard them at breakfast complaining that the raccoons had ruined their perfectly nice tent by clawing a hole in it. Oops. Story 5. I got my first period at a sleepover, and lucky for me, the first year of periods came with wicked vomiting and diarrhea. So in the middle of the night, right after everyone fell asleep, I destroyed my friend's bathroom. Then, on my way back to the living room where 5 preteen girls were crammed, I proceeded to vomit directly between 2 girls sleeping. I had to ask the mom for help with cleaning the mess. Story 6. More embarrassing than effed up. Accidentally clogged the toilet at friend X's house. There was no plunger and the toilet was filling rapidly. I panicked and ran to my friend, who promptly called for his dad. His dad takes one look and yells from the bathroom, "Jesus, X, how big of a crap did you take?" It took years before I went back to his house. Story 7. I clogged the toilet at a friend's house in the middle of the night. It started to overflow and there was no plunger. I woke up my friend, who then woke up his parents. Turned out that the water that had overflowed had soaked through the floor and was dripping into the kitchen. His mom started trying to collect the dripping water downstairs while his dad was on clog duty. I never saw a plunger that night. What I did see was my friend's dad elbow deep in crap water, pulling out a wad of it and toilet paper. The floor was covered. We had to get that cleaned up. More crap water. Ugh. By this time, his sister was awake and came to investigate. I haven't talked to them in over 20 years. Story 8. I bathed my friend. Two of us stayed at a friend's house in our early teens. We raided their parents' liquor cabinet and proceeded to not understand how alcohol works. We drank every liquor under the sun, very quickly, over the course of a few hours. We chased shots with popsicles and ate animal crackers to get the taste of gin out of our mouths. One of the three of us stood atop a small staircase into the living room, maybe 4 steps, a few feet in distance. He swayed, grabbed onto the railing, turned pale, and then projectile vomited so violently that it all landed and splashed at the bottom of the staircase, leaving the steps clear minus a few drops. He then immediately fell down the stairs and began to laugh in a pool of his own vomit. We picked him up, dragged him to the bathroom, stripped off all of his clothes, and shoved him in the shower. He had thick curly hair that was filled with bright red popsicle-covered animal cracker paste. I told him to put out his hands as he kept yelling to not tell everyone he had a small dong. Once he finally complied, I poured shampoo in his hands and told him to clean his hair. He slapped it all into his face, causing him to gag and his eyes to burn. At this point, I had to get him cleaned up, so I did. We had no spare clothes for him, barring our friend's brother's clothes. He was quite obese. We had to get a belt and tightly tie what I can only describe as parachute shorts around his waist. We went to sleep afterwards and convinced ourselves no one in the house heard us. Story 9. I don't remember what we were looking for, but me and another friend went through our buddy's parents' bedroom drawers and found a VHS tape. We were curious and idiotic, so we popped the tape in to see what was on it. Our buddy walked in while we were watching his parents go at it. His scream was the most horrifying/shocking thing I have heard to this day. Story 10. So in college, I lived in a 5-person dorm and we had 1 bathroom. All those people took mad long in there, always, and I had to piss so badly. I had my ESA with me, my little baby monster, my cat, and of course his litter box was in my room. Well, I didn't want to piss my pants or on the floor, so hey, I did what I had to do. I have not told many people this story because it's incredibly embarrassing, but I do think about it from time to time because it was so damn funny. The whole time my cat was watching me like, "What are you doing?" Story 11. We found Kraft singles in the fridge and put one over the nose and mouth of a friend of ours who fell asleep on the couch before everyone else. It immediately softened and molded into a cheesy seal over his face and he stopped breathing. We all freaked out for a solid 10 seconds very quietly until we heard him make a chewing sound. MFR smelled cheese and took action immediately despite being unable to breathe and just straight up ate a mouth-sized hole into the single unconsciously. We then proceeded to plaster the entire package onto his face one at a time and watch him hoover up the cheese slices in order to not die. Story 12. This is not the weirdest thing, but something that has always stuck out to me. Had a girl tell me that she knew someone who pleasured themselves by holding themselves up at the top of a door and basically doing pull-ups against the door to get off. She even demonstrated it for me. Then she took a very long shower with a detachable shower head. She came out silent and out of it for a bit. It didn't occur to me until a few years later that she had the most defined arms out of anyone I knew at the time who was our age. I remember thinking that was weird since she played soccer, but her upper body was ripped. Also, no one would make that up and say it was their friend because it was so strange and she was way too good at it. I tried after her, thinking, sweet, a new way to do it, but I could only raise my body a few times. Anyway, girl got off from the corner of her closet door by doing pull-ups. Story 13. I peed on my friend's couch during a sleepover. I was 10, kinda old to pee the bed, I know. I woke up in a panic, of course, but discovered the couch cushions weren't sewed to the couch and they were identical on both sides. So I flipped it, changed into a spare pair of shorts, and went to sleep. A year later, while I was at my friend's house, his mom discovered my huge yellow stain on the bottom of a couch cushion. Of course she didn't suspect me. My friend's little sister took the heat. It was me, Mrs. Schofield. I pissed on your couch and let it soak for a year. Sorry. Story 14. Was at a sleepover. My buddy slept on his couch and I slept on his beanbag chair with a blanket. After hours of playing 007 GoldenEye, I get up and go use their restroom, except I didn't. I only dreamed I did, and I peed all over myself at like 4 a.m. I hid the blanket in their jacket closet, it was summertime, and threw the beanbag chair and my soiled underpants in their outdoors dumpster. They lived on a ranch. I was 14 at the time. Story 15. My friend Chad got permission for me and another friend to sleep over for the night. We hung out all day, but the family had plans to go see his grandfather. We all packed into the car, and when we got to the nursing home, Chad, Travis, and I decided to race around the building. Halfway through, my stomach started rumbling. I squatted in the field behind the building and had the most unholy diarrhea of my life. Much to my surprise, I looked down and realized I hadn't squatted far enough away from my pants. And it had all just accumulated there. I pulled up my pants and it started dribbling into my shoes, and I walked the walk of shame past the adults at the front entrance to go to the bathroom and see if I could clean myself up. I sat on the toilet for round 2, tears rolling down my face, crap still advancing down my leg, trying to get myself clean when my friend's father came to check on me. I couldn't tell if he had the look of pity or disgust on his face. We left the nursing home after I was finished expelling the demons from my anus. Chad's parents made me sit on plastic garbage bags in the back seat and had rolled all the windows down for the ride home. Moral of the story, don't go racing on a belly full of Sprite and pizza bites. Story 16. So I have a history of sleep-talking/walking issues, and they're especially heightened when I'm stressed. I don't like being away from home, so sleepovers are a recipe for a disaster for me. Lo and behold, I woke up one morning after my first sleep over to the horrifying news from my friend that I started sleepwalking, yelled karate chop over and over, and proceeded to ruthlessly swing my arms into my friend's stomach, effectively waking her up out of dead sleep. We were 8. This was the first time I slept over at her house, and I never told her about my sleepwalking problems. She still makes fun of me to this day. Story 17. When I was a stupid kid, I got invited for a sleepover. It was a few of us, and we would be going paintballing the next day, through the generosity of the host and his parents. Now, I knew most of them from my school, but was really only good friends with one, and he suggested they invite me as he knows I like to paintball. In the nighttime, when we were all in the living room being loud and dumb kids, I stupidly said the host's name was probably upstairs banging his mom. Everyone burst out into laughter. Well, I said it loud enough that they heard upstairs as well, and his mom wasn't very happy. The next day, it was brought up, and they completely blamed the wrong person. I never said a word about how it was me. That was about 10 or 11 years ago, and I still think about it. It was so rude and unnecessary, and honestly, I wish someone had outsed me, but you live and you learn. Story 18. Was probably in like 6th grade, maybe. Buddy of mine had a sleepover birthday. We had a super cool basement with pool and GameCube and a mini fridge, dope parents who bought us pizza, and all that. It was about like 15 of us spending the night. At some point around like 2 a.m., someone wanted to play Mario Kart, and all you heard was a big crash and suddenly a very faint, I think I just spilled orange soda on the GameCube, cue a faint bzzzt sound, and yup, GameCube was dead. Buddy's parents were not happy. Pretty sure that was the last big sleepover like that. Story 19. In the mid-late 90s, my brother got really into the anarchist cookbook and learned how to tap into the neighbor's landlines from a box on the pole using a touch-tone phone and some connectors from Radio Shack. We'd have friends sleep over, we are close in age, and we'd sneak out and he'd hook a phone up so we could call phone sex lines from outside a neighbor's house in the bushes. I still wonder if they disputed the charges or if the wife just thought the husband was calling 1-900 big tits at 2 a.m. Story 20. I was at a sleepover at my best friend's house in 7th grade. Her brother was 2 years older and really cute. All evening he asked if I'd come out with him after everyone was asleep. I said no, but of course late that night I felt him tugging on my foot. My friend and I were in her queen bed, and he was at the end whispering at me to please come talk to him. For some reason, I was finding the whole thing hilarious and trying to laugh quietly. Dude pulls down his shorts and shows me this massive boner. While impressive, it just set me laughing harder. Finally, his sister rises straight up like the kid in The Exorcist and screams, "Michael, stop trying to get her to look at your boner." We exchanged a meaningful look as we heard his mother's yell, "God damn it, Michael," and fling her door open. It was too soon for us. I had seen my first adult dong, and I needed some time to process it. We did go out when I was in 9th or 10th grade, but I never saw that beast again. Editing, for those that asked, Michael's cause of death was complicated and tragic, along the lines of permanent solution to a temporary problem, but it was clear he changed his mind. Michelle died in an accident. Edit 2, I have put the info below in a separate comment, but should have included it here. His sister, Michelle, had been awake the whole time and had heard the conversation. These siblings were less than a year apart in age, had very similar, huge, extroverted personalities. Their mom was extremely depressed over the divorce, so screaming one of both the kids' names was a constant occurrence. She was often intoxicated, so I don't know if she registered boner as much as stop screaming at 2 a.m. It was the early 1980s, and I loved both those kids, and while I had never seen a boner before, I never felt threatened or coerced in any way, and it was just a one-off thing. Michael was one of the sweetest, kindest people I knew. He died in 1988, and his sister died in 1996. Story 21. When I was in middle school, I had a sleepover at my friend's place, and we spent the night taking questionable selfies on her bed and sending them to guys in our class. Later that night, we took turns throwing up in her bathroom after eating copious amounts of pizza because we both had raging eating disorders. It wasn't exactly the healthiest friendship I've ever had. Story 22. First sleepover with boys and girls. Was like 17 and no parents about. Didn't do anything, but woke up in the morning with all my mates laughing at me and none of the girls talking to me. Turns out that a girl who I'd been flirting with and kissing the night before had come to wake me up in the middle of the night. No idea why. I prefer to assume it was to say mean things to me, and in my face I had full-on punched her, smack bang in the face. I was so confused waking up. Everyone was mad at me. No girl would even speak to me. It took a week until someone told me what I had apparently done. Still cringe at it to this day. Story 23. We got drunk and went streaking on the beach at night. We were all guys. It just seemed like the thing to do. One of my friends couldn't find his clothes after returning from the ocean, but had a change of clothes at the friend's house. We left him on the pitch black beach naked, and vowed we would return and find him with his clothes. Well, we had to screw with him. It's what grade school guys did. So we waited a couple hours at the house and then ventured out to get him. The guy was pissed. He had encountered multiple midnight walker tourists and had to retreat into the ocean to avoid being seen. We laughed our asses off and played Super Nintendo games till the sun rose. We went back out to the beach and never found his first set of clothes, but that was 24 years ago and we laugh about it to this day. Story 25. I made a fort on the ground out of pillows and blankets for myself and my younger cousin. I used some heavy textbooks and some 5 to 10 pound weights from my dad's personal gym to pin a sheet above us, give it like a tent-like ambience. In the middle of the night, my younger cousin started to move in his sleep, I assumed, and the weight slipped and bonked him on the head. It sounded like a gong underwater. He's alive and in good health. This was a year or two ago. Story 26. I'm in the 3rd grade and I'm at the sleepover at Lindsay's house. Lindsay's stepdad had been a massive dick to her little brother. My mama didn't raise a quiet child, definitely a polite one though, so I spoke up to Lindsay's mom that I was not cool with the way her husband had been treating their son. Wrong move, 8-year-old me. From that point on, it was clear to me I had said the wrong thing and I was uncomfortable. I go to the bathroom to take a crap. The bathroom off of the mom/stepdad's room. I take my crap, toilet won't flush. Luckily, it's a solid piece. After realizing I had screwed up by saying I didn't like the way the brother had been treated, I knew I couldn't clog the toilet too. Reached into the toilet, grabbed it barehanded, slid it inside of an empty toilet paper holder in the trash can, stuffed both ends with toilet paper, thoroughly washed my hands, and walked out of the bathroom a solid 15 minutes after I'd entered. I was met with weird stares for being in there so long. To this day, I don't know if it was ever found in their trash can. I was never invited back. Don't know if that's because I expressed my concern or because of the, I would have never gone back even if I was invited. About 6 years later, the stepdad was convicted of several child abuse charges on Lindsay and her little brother. I choose to believe nobody ever found out about the crap. Story 27. I was in the bathroom. I could overhear whispers, so I knew they were going to play a prank on me. I thought that the prank would be they would unexpectedly break the door open while I was in there. So to counter-surprise them, I decided to only pretend I was on the toilet and instead hold the door shut by pushing against it with both palms, adding my weight to the door and preventing it from being pushed open. However, this was not their intended prank. They thought I was on the toilet, far from the door, so their idea was to have a sword thrust unexpectedly through the door. The sword went through the door and then straight through the palm of my right hand as well. Blood everywhere. The The sword went in and out quickly. I have vague memories of turning the sink on, wrapping my hand with hand towels, even while blood spurted throughout the room. I don't remember getting into the car, but apparently I was driven to the emergency room. It's now 20 years later. The rest of my hand is fine, but I still have a small scar of light-colored flesh on my palm where I no longer have any feeling. Usually, when I mention the story, I just say that I was stabbed by a sword when I was a teenager, without going into the detail of how and why, which is significantly more stupid. The same person who did this prank on me decided to prank someone else by holding a knife right above a sleeping person's eye, so that when they woke up, the first thing they'd see is a knife blade close up. Thankfully, that particular incident resulted in only a scream with no physical injuries. Looking back, I suspect he may have been an unhealthy friend to hang out with. Story 28. Once, a friend and I told the girl hosting that we'd give her a makeover, then put bright lipstick all over her entire face while she had her eyes closed. Didn't come off for a while. Host and I are still besties, 30 years later. Another time, I was anxious about the sleepover, walked into the kitchen, and vomited all over their floor. The sleepover lasted the 10 minutes it took for my mom to come get me. Story 29. My childhood best friend had 2 younger sisters. Their ages each 2 years apart, so they were 11, middle sister was 9, youngest sister was 7. We snuck into the youngest sister's room, who was notoriously a heavy sleeper, and loosely tied a string around her wrist, then tied the other end to a ceiling fan. Turned the fan on low so her arm was slowly helicoptering in circles while she slept. His mom made the rounds to check on all us kids a few minutes later, and we started cracking up when she saw. Told us to make sure we took it back down before too long, and we assured her we planned to. She went back to bed and must have told her husband, who most certainly did not find the humor in it. We both got grounded for months.